Today in Agronomy on KFIL AM 1060 with Pioneer Field Agronomist Allie and Josh Schaffner. Here's Josh and Allie.
Good morning, Southeast Minnesota. It's April 14th, 2021, and this is episode 68, Allie. So it's been an interesting stretch here, Allie. We were extremely warm, well above average last week, and we saw some field activity take place. We obviously saw a lot of new seeding. We saw some corn. I'm sure there's a few isolated soybeans that went in last week. But with that said, we'll maybe talk about a little bit about that later in the show. But I think the big thing, Allie, that, I'm sure your phone's been busy this week as mine of, what do we do moving forward here? We got, maybe some good soil conditions coming, but the air temperatures are a little below the average.
Yeah, I think, for the majority, like you said, likely have not started planting yet. So everyone's just wondering, what are those considerations if you are on the fence of whether to start when it's fit? So I think, first thing we talk about are obviously soil conditions at the current state and time. Obviously, we're coming off some subtle rains. Some areas had a little bit more than others. So over the weekend, obviously, fields were probably a little bit tacky. You'd still be leaving some tracks, but as we look at, we are having a lot of wind here, obviously abnormally cool. But I think it does appear that as we look at in terms of field conditions being fit, you look at the end of the day today and then on into the weekend, likely we are going to be checking the boxes in terms of soil fitness to get in and plant. But obviously a lot of people are maybe watching the temperature side of things a little bit more than soil fitness. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that seems to be the big question. And and it seems to me, Ellie, like we, every planting season, we go through a little stretch like this where, we get this early window of opportunity and it always boils down to, is it too cold? Are the conditions right? What should we do? Are we going to hurt ourselves? And there's always this, magical temperature of 50 degrees that, should we wait for that? Do we put ourselves in a bad spot to do that? And here we're kind of right there again, right? Here's that window. And I sometimes joke, Allie, it's kind of a debate in the industry, to plant or not to plant. And usually there's a little bit of disagreement and it maybe confuses some of our producers of what they should do. And, we talked a little bit, Allie, I think in the last episode around some historical planting data information and looking at things like that. And, I guess the way I look at it, I'm just, right or wrong, you can take this for what it's worth. I'm not saying this is the right or the wrong answer, but I'm a big believer that if the soil conditions are fit, and not so much worrying about what's the exact temperature or what the forecast is bringing, Mother Nature can always throw us curveballs. But historically, if the soil conditions are fit, I always struggle not to be out there, probably doing some planting. In this situation, we are ultra early, and it looks like we could have a long period without a lot of moisture in the forecast here where we may have some opportunities to be out there. But I guess my take, if the soil conditions get fit, I would really encourage growers to maybe take a look at getting started or resuming. I don't think we're at a situation we need to plant around the clock, but I would maybe utilize the good soil conditions and the drier weather to at least get going. And maybe you don't push as hard as you maybe normally would and stretch out the planting dates, the window here a little bit. But that's going to be, as I've talked to growers, the conversation I've had. And I guess I just kind of stick to my guns there of if it's fit, we'll be okay. And if you look at the last 7 planting seasons where we've tracked it, Allie, planting in those first windows, it's never been worse. 2 of the 7 years, it was the same all the way across the board. And 5 of the 7 years, the early planting date windows, were just better yield and drier grain across the board, which that's kind of what we look for. We want to get our best return on investment.
Yeah. And I think, just a reiterating point there would be too, even though we are talking about cool conditions, I think the key point here is we're talking about dry conditions. Mm-hmm. So, that's what we're really focused on here, arguably. You could choose to park the planters because of maybe suboptimal soil temperatures, but you could potentially be giving up a lot of calendar and moving too much into May, if we wait too long here. But I think, quick question on that though would be maybe if someone's not quite ready to plant some corn until they find some more reliable soil temps, maybe they're still, stuck on the temperature side of things. Does one consider planting some early soybeans, knowing that they can maybe compensate for a little bit more uneven emergence?
Yeah, a good question. And I think we'll see probably some of both go in here in this as this window opens up. So I think we'll see some of that. If you're maybe in you have a one planter situation, I guess I tend to lean towards corn, even though we could make a case for both crops. But, I guess I'd focus on the corn here. to get going. I'd always, like I said, they're both important. If you got two rigs, you're probably going to start both at a similar time frame is what I would do. But I don't have a major issue either way. And if we're planting in good fit soil conditions, I think that's what we want to look for. And yeah, I guess I'm just going to stick with my guns on that, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I guess I'm not opposed to either one. But I'm just going to put priority number one on corn is probably where I'm going to be, especially being this early, knowing that we could have a potentially a pretty wide window here of planting dates.
Yeah, and I think you talk about a wide window. I'm kind of stealing this line from one of our counterparts, but they'd mentioned don't pull all-nighters, don't skip lunch. Just take your time, get some corn in the ground. So I think, keep that top of mind, everyone. I think most importantly, when you decide to start planting this week, make sure the field is fit. Don't just go check the conditions inside the field drive. Think about those areas that maybe have below average drainage. Also, if you do get started early, make sure you've got enough depth. Don't be shallowing those up to try and increase emergence. That'll actually be more of a detriment than what it would help you. So just some reminders there. But coming back from break, we'll talk about a little bit more about our observations from the field in both corn and alfalfa. Welcome back, listeners. So Josh, in segment one, we kind of addressed the elephant in the room, if you will, just the planning situation of when conditions are fit, should we not consider planning. I think just final comments on that before we maybe work through a few other common questions we're having from the field.
Yeah, no, I mean, a good discussion. Ultimately, every operation's got to make that decision for their own, based on, their operation and their situation. And, I just look at it. I think we could have a great opportunity to get a jump start and plant in some good conditions. And also, maybe we have so much time of April left, maybe spread out our planting dates and have some risk. And I know we were talking kind of during the intermission there, Allie, that, every growing season, there's always usually 2 days that you see a dip in yield. So that's why I kind of want to go at a pace where, hey, let's not put a huge percentage on 1 to 2 days there. Maybe in some cases, if we could plant all of our corn in a perfect situation in 7 days, maybe we stretch that out to be a 12 to 14 day window here, and you could still be done in April, which would be a great thing. But that's just a few things to be thinking about here as we make that decision late week.
Yep, absolutely. So I think common question from the field, a lot of folks, specifically those that are making or looking to make some urea applications, spreading that out, they're just questioning, they want to continue to make these applications, but also recognizing they might not be looking to work that ground up for another, say, 5 days or so. Curious, should they be looking at a urease inhibitor such as Accutane?
Yeah, that's been a common question this week. And really, it's been such a nice stretch here that, great for, this is great for logistical reasons for, the retailers. They got a lot of acres to cover with the spreaders, for sure. And in some cases, I think a lot of our producers are looking at, okay, maybe late week guys are going to get going, but obviously if it's nice into next week, everyone's going to probably get going. So, hey, can I get ahead of this? But knowing that maybe I might not plant tomorrow or the next day, but I'd like to get it spread. And the cooler conditions are going to be really nice, but it is pretty dry, and you just never know if the weather might throw us for a curveball. So, if we are going to spread and maybe it's going to sit there for 3 to 4 to 5 plus days potentially to get there, looking at a urease inhibitor, I think could be a good investment just to make sure we don't lose some nitrogen in that investment. And I think we'll probably see quite a bit of that utilized from a standpoint of, hey, I can get my urea down, my nitrogen down now if I let them, but I might use a urease inhibitor just to buy myself a little bit of insurance and make sure that we don't run into a volatility issue, knowing that it's going to be, maybe several days before I get there. So not a bad thing. Again, I'm not saying it's something you should absolutely have to do, but the cooler temps are going to help us. However, if you're not going to incorporate it, maybe within 24 to 48 hours, that might be a really good investment.
Yep. And knowing, like you said, that we do expect drier conditions here. So not like rainfall is going to be the contributing thing to sufficiently move that urea into the soil. Moving on, I think alfalfa in most years maybe has been a larger topic of conversation as we assess winter kill, but certainly always still an important thing to do, no matter how many years old your stands are. We want to make sure we're fully assessing those, what's good, what's bad, and any ugly. This year so far, Josh, from what you've seen, pretty safe to say so far, winter survival has been pretty good.
Yeah, I know we've compared some notes there, Allie, and I've been on a few different times and been really encouraged with what I've seen. Sometimes, I always look at the new seeding maybe first, and from what I've looked at there, I think it looks tremendous right now, what I've looked at. And And I'm not sure why, Ellie, last year seemed like new seeding overall it was good, but there was maybe just a few, acres that just took a long time to get going, and whether that was just maybe a drier season or an environmental thing. In some cases too, I know we've talked about with Jeff, being really careful with our herbicide selection. We're in 2019, we're really late on some corn herbicide applications, and we seeded really early, and maybe that led to some variability out there, but, hard to say. But on the flip side, even, some new seeding that I was kind of keeping an eye on last fall, I'd like to look at, I thought it came through and they look really good. And established stands, look good. We're seeing some of the wheel traffic, we're losing some crowns here and there, which you'd expect after, if we're entering that third or fourth year. But I guess overall, I'm really encouraged. It's really actually, some of that alfalfa is 6-8 inches tall already. It's really taken off after we got some moisture, and, going to slow down with some cooler temps here. But it's really, for the calendar date, it's off to the races. It'll be interesting, depending on the weather, just to see when first cutting comes around. But if we do get a warmer stretch here for another month, it could be an early first crop, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I think good talking points. And like I said, that's been my take. I don't look at as much alfalfa as you do, but with the way the alfalfa fields are looking this spring, seems to be very positive so far. So we'll continue on with those assessments as needed. I think, real quick, as we come into the end of the show, Josh, corn planted Easter weekend does have a few GDUs on it, maybe close to like 80. So a little ways to go for emergence, but just any general assessments from seeds you think you've seen in the ground yet?
I was out a little bit, and I know some corn that was planted last Monday, so the day after Easter Sunday. That's all sprouted good, and obviously last week we did collect some GDUs, which is crazy to look at that. And soil temps were well into the 60s some of those days, but the initial stuff looks good. It germed, and we got good sprouts, and definitely going to be slowed down here a little bit by the cool temps, but it'll be curious to see when that emerges. But so far, it looks really awesome what I've looked at so far. But it's not up yet. We'll have to get an assessment once it's out of the ground.
So I think that's it for this show, everyone. Certainly give us a call if you have any questions from the field. Always happy to talk through considerations specifically around planting this time of the year. We'll be back in next shows with updates from the field.
You've been listening to Today in Agronomy on KFIL AM 1060. If you've missed part of the show or want to hear more, check out the show page at kfilradio.com or with the 103.1 KFIL app. Stay connected with Allie and Josh on Twitter. It's at Allie GYs, WISE, and at Josh Schaffner to submit your questions for the show. Tune in next Wednesday for the next Today in Agronomy on KFIL AM 1060.